This is part 2 of hardware render tuning, and I'm going to start with adding some texture elements. We just need to break this up. This is really too flat a surface, and it doesn't look right for snow. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the hypershade, and I'm going to add a 3D texture as a bump map. And remember that these two elements are using the same shader. So technically, these objects should have texture reference objects created for them. And that's in the rendering menu set under texture and then create texture reference object. I'm not going to sweat that right now. I think that ultimately we're going to end up with a relatively low amount of influence from the bump map that's going on here. It's just going to help break this up just in the specularity, most likely. So I'm going to go ahead and map this way I can see everything that's attached, which is nothing right now. And then I go to 3D textures, and I'll add something in, maybe like a solid fractal, something like that. So I can middle click solid fractal and drop that onto here. And it pulled up the wrong menu, so I'm just going to deselect. I'm not sure exactly why, but Maya has been doing that in this 2012 version. So again, I'll just do it from here, and it typically will work. And I'll choose bump map. And then once again, I'll select my shader ball, and I'll map the ins and outs. So because we have hardware texture on, you see that the effect of that bump map immediately, which is, as you can see, quite ridiculous. So I need to go ahead and tune this down a good bit. So this is typical of bump map. The bump depth is typically just ridiculously high. So I'll just bring that way down to maybe 0.1 or something like that. And it's still too much. You can still see all the effects happening in here. And it really needs to be softened. This is just sort of what happened by default. So I'm going to lower this guy a little bit more, maybe half it, and see what that does about removing these artifacts. That helped a lot, actually. That looks considerably better. Um, so I was going to go change the size and everything, but actually it looks like if I just keep bringing this down a little bit, it looks like it's probably going to tune up just fine. Okay, so it's a little bit funky looking right here, but not too bad. There is a bump filter here that typically would take care of that kind of thing by blurring this out a lot, but I don't think it cares. The hardware renderer cares about that filter. So I could also do the filter on the texture itself, the solid fractal, or just make sure it's nice and smooth in its transitions. That's probably already the case. So let me just take a look at what this is actually looking like. A little bit hard through here. I didn't notice this last time, but looks like our lighting is a little bit strong back there, and that's part of what's carrying over here. That's more of a specular thing that's happening, and it's definitely a little too pronounced, I would say. So let me go ahead and take care of that back in the hypershade again. Select our shader ball, bring up the attribute editor here, and let me just push up our eccentricity, and that'll give us a broader area that this is falling off. And then bring down our specular roll off a little bit, reduce that overall brightness of that. And it looks like I still need to bring my spec color down a bit. Starting to get significant delays in updates here. It's still unbelievably fast compared to a typical render a region and wait around and see what happens kind of approach. But that's looking better. It may have come off just a little bit too much. I'm not a fan of blocky that is. And we might actually be able to get that to move just by rotating or scaling our 3D placement node. I'll just try to up this just a hair to bring some of that back. Okay, that's not bad. Okay, so I'll grab the 3D placement node here and we'll see what this does update wise. Let's see if we can get that to rotate into a position where it feels a little bit better. So you can see the effect of moving things around. It definitely had an ill effect there, but it did help break up over here a little bit. I think it was a little better before. It's a little bit of back and forth again, depending on what I have my settings on in here. I might be able to optimize this so I can work a little bit closer to real time, but as a tuning operation goes, this is still pretty dang fast. So let me just see what I have here. So I actually might be able to get away with going up to maybe 1024 or something like that, having a higher resolution. I'm not even sure if this qualifies as an unsupported texture, but it may. Let me just turn off my ambient occlusion for now and see if that speeds us up. And it's just too much for it to chew on right now. Okay, well at least that breaks up into a non-square pattern. I prefer this one by far to what we had just a moment ago. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this guy back up and just lower our overall bump depth again. See if we can get rid of this artifacting that's happening through here. Okay, so that worked pretty well actually. It doesn't feel like it's that weird square stuff anymore. It looks like a nice sort of snowdrift kind of texture. Lighting again in this it's not perfect. This over here actually feels really funky now. I think I just have a little bit too much angle happening there. Just hit that almost directly straight up. And that helps. That darkened that back up in there. So I could potentially, add another fill from this side or something and let this fall off a little bit darker. That might help matching the background, but hopefully I've done enough tuning to give you a sense of how it works. Okay, so the last thing is making sure what you get in a render is what you want. So let's go up to the hardware tab here. Again, you just make your selection render using hardware 2.0. And I'm going to go ahead and enable our screen space ambient occlusion. Make sure samples is set all the way up to 32. I'll enable motion blur, and by default the motion blur is probably going to be a little heavy in this, so I might suggest going down to maybe 0.35 as a starting point. And then I want to make sure this thing is anti-aliased as much as it can possibly handle. So I'll go ahead and push that up. Everything else is fine for now. I just need to make sure that some of my objects are turned off here. So it's got this object type filter here. And basically, I want to turn everything off except for what it is I'm trying to render. So I'm trying to render NURB surfaces and polygons. And all the rest of this stuff should just go away. So now I shouldn't see any of that stuff at all. So I'll go ahead and run a frame here. So that comes out really quickly. And I can see a few things. First, I have still some artifacting happening in here, and I can see my effect, so I'm okay with this. I can drop it down again, but I still see my deform handles as well. So my deformers are still hanging out, and that's a little goofy. I think that that's actually just an oversight here in the object type filter. It seems like they should have deformers and you could just turn them off here, but I don't know how to do that aside from just actually grabbing the deformers, throwing them in a layer and turning the layer off. I don't really particularly need to see these handles at this point anyways, so I'll just go ahead and select out all of those deformer handles, add them to a layer, and just turn that layer off. Okay. Okay, so now we'll go back into the camera and we should just see no deformers anymore. That's good. That means they're going to be gone from our other one. I feel like our motion blur felt a little light that time, so I'm gonna push this up to maybe 0.45. See what that does for us, and then I needed to lower the bump value. So again, I'll come into the bump value, and since this is rendering larger than it's displaying here, I'll just have to do it over here. Try something like that. And again, I'll just run a frame and see what we get. Okay, so it looks like that took care of basically all of the artifacts. Still, you know, it's not a perfect quality render. I can see it has some issues around the edges, but the lighting looks like it balances pretty well. Maybe just a little bit hot still here. I could go in and tune that down. The motion blur looks pretty good. I have a broken up landscape that basically matches color-wise in the shadow and in the highlights. So I'd be pretty happy with this, and I'd just go ahead and batch render it from here. So to do that, you just go to the rendering menu set and choose render and batch render. Now in here, the one thing that you need to make sure of is that you have all of your common settings set up. And I haven't gone over that in this video. I'm going to do that in a separate video that's just about common render settings. So if you're not sure what to do there, just check that video out.